Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mini Scroll, the daily internet culture podcast, bringing you the biggest stories from social media, the creator economy, and the digital space every Monday through Thursday and sometimes Fridays. I'm your host, Lauren Meisner, the founder of the youth digital media brand Centennial World. Welcome back to Mini Scroll, everyone. All right, let's just get into the stories for today. But as always, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Please Spotify star rate us. Give us an Apple review, subscribe to us on YouTube, leave us a comment. All of it helps. Buy us a coffee if you feel so inclined. All of it helps so much to keep us going. Okay, I have a really big first story, so we just need to dive right in. Ultraviolet has recalled their product after SPF testing scandal? Situation. I'm not really sure how to describe this, but it's official. The TGA here in Australia has recalled Ultraviolet's lean screen sunscreen, and Ultraviolet has removed it from shelves. So I did speak about this situation when it first came out in June, but I am going to rehash this story and provide a bit of a comprehensive timeline. I know this story is maybe feels a little bit outside of internet culture, but there is a big influencer tie-in, and there's also just a big social media component tie-in to this story. Also, Ultraviolet is an incredibly buzzy luxe sunscreen brand here in Australia, so this is a huge deal. This is like a Roman Empire for me, this story. I'm not even joking. Okay, so the timeline breakdown was inspired by one of my besties, Crystal Andrews. She runs ZFeed, an independent publication. She did a full timeline breakdown in her weekly newsletter on Sunday. I will link it in the show notes for you guys. You should definitely subscribe. But reading her timeline put a lot into perspective for me. So I wanted to give you guys that context and that perspective as well. So know that this timeline and the inspo for it came from her. Okay, so in February, the consumer advocacy group Choice tested 20 popular Australian sunscreens labeled as SPF 50+. The testing was carried out at Eurofin's Dermatest lab in Sydney, and each product sample was decanted into amber glass jars and tested within 1 hour. Results showed that 16 of the 20 products fell below their claimed SPF. The worst result was Ultraviolet's lean screen, which came back with an SPF rating of 4. The next lowest product that was tested in this study was SPF 24. So that tells you how big of a discrepancy there was there. Choice alerted Ultraviolet to the results and advised that the product undergo a second round of testing at a different lab. In April, Ultraviolet commissioned its own testing at Princeton Consumer Research, PCR, in Manchester, England. PCR reports an SPF of 61.7 for lean screen. In May, Choice sent the product for further testing at Normic Schonder Institute Lab in Germany. This test also returned a low result, SPF 5. So Choice got SPF 4 and SPF 5, whereas Ultraviolet got SPF 61.7. In June, Choice published the results. Mainstream media and social media platforms quickly picked up the story, and obviously the particular attention was on Ultraviolet's SPF of 4, because if you know anything about the Australian sun, if you are from Australia, if you have been here, or you just know anything about it, our sun is so extreme here, and there are such high rates of skin cancer here. So SPF testing in this country, as far as I know, I've been here for almost 10 years, have always been told that they are so incredibly strict with it, and SPF, everybody that I know wears SPF 50 all over their body every single day. It is absolutely necessary, even in the winter, you just have to. So this was a huge deal for people that have been using Ultraviolet's SPF lean screen, thinking they were getting SPF 50. A lot of people using it every single day because it's a facial sunscreen, and really these results were very shocking. So off the back of Choice publishing their results, the TGA, which is the regulatory body responsible for sunscreens in Australia, issued a statement saying that they will investigate and, quote, take regulatory action as required. I do want to note, too, there's a lot of information. I don't know if it's misinformation or disinformation, but there's a lot of noise about how Choice was shady in how they published this. I think there's some confusion around how we received this messaging. People are blaming Choice for those sensationalized clickbaity headlines when really they just published the results for the most part, and it was, the media that picked that up. Okay, so then right after Ultraviolet posts a statement on its website, which was later deleted, but my friend Crystal did link it. I believe it's archived online. They called the SPF 4 result, quote, scientifically impossible. The brand suggested that Choice mishandled the product, tested the wrong item, or used an insufficient sample size. They also said they've never received a substantial amount of consumer complaints of like sunburns or anything that would indicate that their SPF was not up to par. Then one of the co-founders, Ava, posted on TikTok saying, I put lean screen on my children and I still would tomorrow, basically defending the brand, defending the product. And the brand was very much defending itself in the comments section. Then Choice released a follow-up statement standing by its results, explaining its testing methodology and publishing reports on all 20 products tested. Okay, this is the part of the timeline that I feel has been missing. So people kind of got over this story. So like a couple weeks after the initial bombshell of SPF 4 and like the media craze around it, the ABC on July 4th published an investigation into PCR, which is the lab used by Ultraviolet. Again, I think that this is the piece that a lot of people are missing. Industry experts told the ABC that PCR results for lean screen appear unusually consistent, with one saying he had, quote, never seen results like PCR's in his entire career. Half of the brands that failed the Choice test also relied on PCR for their own certification testing. A couple days later, the Australian Financial Review published an article that essentially claimed that PCR like falsely claims results on products. And this story also revealed that Ultraviolet does not formulate lean screen themselves. The sunscreen is manufactured by Wild Child Laboratories in Perth. And then about a month later, on Friday, Ultraviolet announced that it is pulling lean screen from the market after additional testing showed inconsistencies. The brand also confirmed they are no longer using PCR for testing or Wild Child Laboratories for manufacturing. So this is a snippet of their announcement. They say, we prioritize your skin and your health. Before we go further, we want to make it clear that this only concerns the performance of lean screen. We had multiple independent labs conduct new tests of lean screen. This week, we received results from those tests that demonstrated significant and candidly atypical variability. Across 8 different tests, lean screen has now returned SPF data of 4, 10, 21, 26, 33, 60, 61, and 64. That wasn't good enough for us, and it isn't good enough for you. Given this pattern of inconsistency in testing, we have decided to withdraw Lean/Velvet Screen from the market effective immediately. And then they had a tile where they explained all the different things that they were going to do to, rectify this situation, and they're going to give customers refunds. Now, Mecca, which is Australia's basically biggest beauty retailer, is reportedly pulling another buzzy Aussie skincare brand, Naked Sundays, from its shelves as they apparently use the same lab for their SPF products. There is a lot of debate online right now about the brand's initial reaction and their kind of like quote unquote transparency now. But I don't really want to open that kettle of fish, okay? What I wanted to focus on was the influencer side of things. As someone who used to work in the Australian beauty media industry, I can tell you it is like a cult. And there were so many influencers and beauty journalists alike who publicly defended Ultraviolet and like slammed Choice. Obviously, that hasn't necessarily aged well. And I think what we can learn from this as consumers is just how fast influencers are to defend their paycheck. Because so many of the influencers and creators and journalists that were defending Ultraviolet and slamming Choice, they claim or brand themselves as experts and educators in skincare, in beauty, in that industry. So in theory, their main focus should always be on their audience, who they are providing education and information for. Their allegiance should be to their audience. And obviously, we didn't necessarily see this as the case. Like, I know this situation was like confusing and bizarre. I'm not like putting the blame on influencers, but I think so many of the biggest beauty and skincare influencers and journalists in this country backed Ultraviolet rather than suggesting to their audience to, take a beat, wait for more information, maybe find another SPF in the meantime until we got more information. I think the entire PR/ communications around this entire situation was a bit of a mess. It was hard to watch. I don't know if this is going to be totally the end of it. I think it's possible that there's more brands that come out that need to be recalled, but it's very scary. SPF 4, wearing SPF 4 in Australian sun as your daily sunscreen is honestly horrifying. I hope we don't get any more information like this. Like, I hope that this is the end of it. And I also do want to say, like, these are female founders, and I cannot imagine what they have been going through. But I also feel like with great responsibility, like choosing to produce essentially like a medical product like sunscreen, comes great responsibility. Not to quote Spider-Man or whoever says that in that movie. So I don't want to add to the pile-on. I think this is a really horrible situation to begin with. I can't imagine what they're going through. But I think the reaction that I've seen from, honestly, some of my ex-peers has been questionable. All right, the next story that I have for you guys, Bobbi Althoff has announced that she is starting a new podcast called Not This Again. So those of you that were like, she's not done forever when I announced that her podcast was ending, you guys were right. I wasn't so sure, but no, you guys were right. So in the video announcing the podcast, Bobbi is with Drake, which is a callback to her viral moment in 2023, her viral interview with him, sitting on what seems to be a bed in front of a very pretty view. The video is basically just them trying to describe the podcast. It's very deadpan. It's very dry humor. It isn't exactly clear like what each episode of Not This Again will look like going forward, but based on the trailer, it seems like the exact same vibe as her old podcast. So I'm starting to think maybe her old podcast was just dropped by its network and she just took the concept and is, moving on to a different network or doing it independently by herself and just going to keep the same format. But yeah, I understand the hark back to the Drake episode, but I also do think it's interesting for her to align herself with Drake, given everything that went on with him and Kendrick. I think she is obviously trying to kind of chase that level of virality and buzziness again, especially for the launch of this, but I don't know. It's an interesting choice. All right, and the last story that I have for you guys is a very sad one. Lil Nas X has been detained and hospitalized. In the early hours of Thursday morning last week, police in Los Angeles were called to investigate a report of a naked man walking through the streets. This man was Lil Nas X. The video has since been obtained by TMZ. I'm not going to share a clip of it just out of privacy because there is something I would say like definitely going on with him in the video, but you can see him walking down the street wearing cowboy boots and underwear. Lil Nas X was subsequently taken to hospital and also booked on suspicion for obstructing a police officer. Pulling from statements made by police spokesperson Charles Miller, quote, "Upon arrival, the suspect charged at officers and was taken into custody. He was transported to a local hospital for possible overdose and placed under arrest for battery on a police officer." So obviously many people are really upset to see Lil Nas X in this situation and are wishing him the best. There's been a lot of reflection on his rise to fame and how he was treated by the industry that would have led him to this point. Quote, "The amount of racism and homophobia Lil Nas X has had to contend with while being a cog in the wheel of these already dehumanizing record labels is truly unimaginable. I wish him love and privacy," wrote Matt XIV. So there has been speculation that Lil Nas X has been dealing with addiction or just dealing with a lot of like mental health battles over the past couple of years. I will say that some people thought this video was a marketing stunt for his album, which could be a whole deep dive episode on its own of kind of our obsession with looking for like covert marketing schemes, Easter eggs. Everything's a conspiracy theory in the music industry and pop culture right now. We touched on that a little bit in the deep dive from Friday, but yeah, obviously that was not the case. But he's also been dealing with some health issues. He revealed in April of this year that he had been hospitalized after experiencing sudden paralysis of his face. So yeah, this is just horrible. I completely agree with the fans who, are concerned about how steep his rise to fame was, how sudden it was, the lack of support around him in that moment. And yeah, I can't imagine how difficult that would be. I think it's really sick that people are posting this clip. And, if you do see it, don't give it engagement. Click like block user or not interested. Like, don't engage because that's why people are posting this, right? They want those views. They want the engagement. Don't give it to them. Like, this should be a private video. I think it's fucked. Anyways, guys, that's it for Mini Scroll today. Thank you so much for listening. I love you guys. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Buy us a coffee if you feel so inclined. Spotify star rate us, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.